Hi, it's Mark Owen from Moose Marketing and PR, the editor of Punchline magazine, and welcome to Punchline Talks, the business breakfast briefers, where each week I invite a panel of experts to go over the morning newspapers, find out what's going on in their own individual businesses and their own individual business sectors, and finally, what's caught their eye in this week's panel. If you like the show, please like, subscribe and share. So let me introduce you to the guys. Today, my guests are Viv Hargreaves, former editor of County Publications and the Forest newspaper. She's also chair of Gloucestershire Academy of Music, chair of Gloucestershire Symphony Orchestra, I can't say that word, chair of Gloucestershire Young Musicians of the Year, and she's also Deputy Lord Lieutenant, ma'am. We have Lindsey Holland, chair of Turf Cheltenham. She's also a member of the Chamber of Commerce, Cheltenham Chamber of Commerce, and is an executive of hospitality and events. And she's the owner of Cleeve Hill Hotel. We have Will Abbott, partner of Randall Payne Accountants. That's the smallest job title we've had for quite some time, Will. Always lovely to see you, mate. And finally, not least, we have Ian Mean, ex-editor of the Citizen, Echo, Western Daily Press, director of Business West. He's the chairman of the
or Gloucestershire Organ Donation Committee.
I put transplant organization. What is it? Sorry.
Organ Donation Committee.
See, I got.
So if you need a new heart, Mark, I'm your man.
You're all heart, Ian. And also, and very soon you're going to be vice chair of the Gloucestershire LEP. Right. Let's have a look at the papers. What's catching the national newspapers today? Righty ho. We got the Guardian. Putin invades. This is like, I can see this going to be quite an iconic picture. The Times, a dark day for Europe. The Mirror, her blood on his hands. The Sun, her blood on his hands. The Daily Mail, Putin to seize capital in days. The Daily Telegraph, this picture really strikes a terrible, sad core of what it's all about, unfortunately. The Financial Times, Putin's forces storm Ukraine's agony. The Daily Express, redrawing map of Europe in blood. The Metro, war in Europe. The Daily Star, bloody Vlad. Who do you think you are kidding, Mr. Putin? It's a very sad day for Europe. I don't know about you guys, but I haven't slept very well since watching these, thinking about these poor people, the Ukrainians, what they're going through. Can't imagine it, can you? One day you're drinking cappuccinos, sitting in a wine bar, and 2 days later you've got missiles, coming down to you. I'm going to start with you, Ian. What's your take?
I think looking at those front pages, and particularly I'm looking at the Times in their masthead, they've sort of put that out of black, a dark day for Europe, and the picture on the front of the Times, front of the Sun, and the Mirror of Helena, a nurse, injured, sort of sums it up. And it's pretty rare, Mark, in national newspapers that you get the two major tabloids having exactly the same headline, her blood on his hands. And I'm an ex-Daily Mail man. Whether you like their politics or not is totally irrelevant, but they've done 22 pages today of brilliant writing from experts and their people on the ground. And one thing that comes over to me today is that British press is still the best in the world. It's an amazing situation. And while all of us have had to change to online, there's nothing like a print product on a huge news day like this. Looking at some other things, the main points, I'm looking at the Daily Telegraph, and one of their key financial writers, Ambrose Evans Pritchard, headline on his big piece is "Sanctions will do nothing to prevent Putin taking control of Ukraine." And I think that's the case. And I've just been listening to Sky News quizzing Wallace, the Defence Secretary. I think, we're pretty powerless. And also in the Telegraph, Fraser Nelson, who's a great writer, his headline, his story says Russia's invasion of Ukraine may well turn out to be Europe's 9/11 moment. Where are we going from here? We don't want to be into nuclear war. NATO are lining up on the borders. what will happen there. It only needs a slight spark to set things off. So extremely worrying. And in terms of, Will's going to talk about financial things, but I was interested in the Sun's back page. Their headline, "Kick Rom Out." That's Abramovich. There is no mention in all the sanctions of Mr. Abramovich and his support of Chelsea. So I'd say, yeah, get him out as well.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more there. Thank you ever so much for your take on that, Ian. Right, let's go over to you, Viv.
Yes, like Ian, coming from the newspaper industry, the front page iconic images of this nurse are the sort of crucial image that will sort of go home with everyone. Incredibly brave woman who was talking on the news last night about how she will fight on despite, you know, this hit in Kiev. And, you know, sort of, I think that really sort of brings it home to us. We've got sort of people, not soldiers, civilians being affected by this, these children having to go into their bunkers. And it's a story which really chills me to the heart. It's absolutely scary. Front pages again, as Ian was saying, in terms of how they've approached it, the Times with its black masthead is significant, and I think, you know, that seeing this sort of story in print really does bring it home. Yes, I've been looking online at the newspapers because our local garage doesn't open its doors. I'm in the country, so I'm in the Forest of Dean, so I can't get at newspapers this morning. So I've been looking online, and amongst the different things I've been reading is Dan Wootton's column in the Daily Mail. And I'm afraid I totally agree with his comment that God help us that senile old men, Putin and Biden, hold world peace in their hands. Boris should step up like his hero Churchill, ignore the modern day Chamberlain Macron, and the West must finally stop being distracted by woke sideshows. Totally agree with that. Absolutely, totally agree. Whether Boris is up to stepping up like his hero is another issue. But in terms of, you know, the worry is you've got Putin, who is a megalomaniac, and his whole sort of the show that's gone on this week with his
his speech,
government colleagues.
But you watched his speech, Viv. And
I did watch his speech.
It totally deranged. It was crazy.
Absolutely deranged. And I think when Ben Wallace said, you know, so that he was bonkers, he was quite right. You know,
it was like a Bond villain. He could have sat there with a little cat on his lap. The way he completely went off on one. Absolutely.
That's the frightening element of this. And when you've got someone like of that nature, and the Star does sort of go, the Daily Star, and I do rate to a degree with their Hitler type image on the front there. That is exactly what is happening here. Incidentally, the front page also looks at Pumps Panic, which will be looking at, and a £10 pint on the way, which are all things which are the petrol pump prices and so on, which will be affected by all of this. Is another story affecting us, also affecting some of our best loved ex-Strictly dancer Motsi Mabuse. She's headlining in the Mail about the fact that she's heartbroken as she reveals that her husband's parents are stranded in Ukraine and they can't get to the Polish border. They're actually stuck there and they don't know what to do to help them. There must be so many people in that situation. There have been calls for us to be much more sort of inclusive on Ukraine immigration. So that's another element that will happen. There will be a huge wave of immigrants into Europe as a result of this. And we must, as a country, think very carefully how we can help in a positive way, I think.
Well, immigrants, I'm sorry, there'd be refugees. There'll be refugees.
Yes, there'll be refugees, yes.
Different things. I'm going to stop you there, Viv. I'm going to thank you ever so much for your take on that. Will, I'm going to go over to you now. I always love it when people tee up the other guests with what they're going to talk about. Well, the financial hit, wearing your accountant's head, huge costs, isn't it, going to go up?
Well, the first thing I'd say, Mark, is you set the bar quite high. I think you did well to get 2 ex-journalists on it with a news day like today. That was a good shout. So yeah, I'll do the accounting stuff. So the first thing that caught my eye when I flicked through the paper was Rishi Sunak says no tax cuts because we're all getting older. That was interesting. But once you get to the economic stuff, I mean, it's quite scary, isn't it? And I think as business people, the one thing that we really dislike is uncertainty. And of course, we've just got huge uncertainty now. And that's building on top of whether it's Brexit or post-pandemic. Inflation was already pretty strong, right? And people were already suffering. Fuel prices, energy prices are already going up. Well, this isn't going to make it any better, is it? So, and then that starts to knock people's pockets. And again, one of the headlines is about consumer confidence. So once we think we need to keep more money to pay gas bills, then we stop spending discretionary, stop going to pubs and buying £10 pints, don't we? I guess the reality there, is beer going to get to be £10 a pint? So be interesting to know what our ex-journalists think about the media overplaying some of the stories to an extent, which then just feeds on itself, doesn't it? So if consumer confidence is dropping, we really don't need to be telling them that their gas bills are going to be £5,000 a year and beer is going to be £25 a pint next week, do we? Because that doesn't actually help. But there's a story in here about BP's links to Russia. Again, I think we have to sort of reflect on where we've been over the last 10, 20 years. We've got closer to Russia. We've kind of tried to treat Putin and Russia as a more normal concern. And businesses have been involved, obviously taking advantage of natural resources. And now we find that this is a problem, Nord 2 pipeline, etc. So all these things, it takes a lot of years to get to a position like this, I think. And then you see sort of a couple of slightly weird headlines. So our friends St James's Place over in Cirencester, a great set of results for them. The share price goes down as a result of what's going on in the global economy, and the same with Lloyd's Bank had a decent set of results, and yet the share price drops. So I think it's that uncertainty, isn't it? What's going to happen next? I think in terms of the situation itself, I always again like to think, well, how can one person like Putin make a decision like this and invade another country and cause so much disruption? And I think the answer actually is that one person can't do that. That person has to be surrounded by other enablers that just give them the power to do it. And even in theory, Putin had to go to Parliament to get permission to invade. So, there's opportunities, I think, at times. And then you start to read stories about protests on the streets in Russia. And part of me is wondering whether actually this is ultimately going to be Putin's downfall, because if sanctions do bite, and I pray to God that they do, because we could be at war already, right? We could already have troops in Ukraine. So actually, the fact that we've decided not to do that, or we're holding back and going to just give sanctions a chance, and if that could save millions of lives, then why wouldn't you try to do that? But if the economy crashes even more in Russia, people need to get on the streets, don't they? And then you wonder just whether Putin has shot himself in the foot with this. We do know probably that he's being supported by China, so that's a massive economy, right? So that's going to be given some support. But when you've got 23 and 24-year-old boys, you don't really want a big war in Europe, do you? That's where I'm sat.
No, totally agree with that sentiment. I think it's good. The only way you're going to turn this around is really from within. Russians themselves who don't want this war, perhaps. But there is that worry there. He's going to lean over to Ying. What's his Chinese? Xing, sorry, yeah. And if they don't control this now, then he could be taking Taiwan. If the West doesn't rise to the challenge, all sorts of problems around the world. Thank you ever so much for that, Will. I'm going to come over to you, Lindsay. Nice to see you again.
And you. Thank you very much for the invite this morning.
No worries at all. I know we're talking about obviously the papers and stuff. What's your take on stuff, please?
Well, I was just thinking, because I was reading the article about Chernobyl, and a lot of this feels very surreal to me, because I guess it's you can see it all on a TV, but then we watch, we have Netflix and we have like the Chernobyl series, and it all feels almost a bit Hollywood in a way. And I think what we were saying about it actually being in print does make it very real. But it was, the Chernobyl thing really got me yesterday. That was the bit when I actually sort of stopped flitting around doing 101 things and actually sat and read, because I was like, why would you want Chernobyl, and trying to, and then you're beginning to understand that, none of this makes sense, but then it does make sense. And it's all those kind of to's and froms, and to be honest, I guess my main concern is, you know, I feel very helpless to the people on those front pages, but looking around about sort of hospitality locally and how it's recovering from the pandemic and what we're all doing and how we're absolutely on edge to find whether the VAT is going to go back up for hospitality. And we're wondering how we're going to keep our businesses going when we have to put our prices up because who's going to come? And now you see the headlines about petrol going up and pints going up and all the bits and pieces are going, and you think, God, this is going to hit home really quite hard, or it could hit home really quite hard in a couple of months. Nobody's coming out because we've had to put our prices up. And that's all internal things. And you just think it's like a culmination of everything at the wrong time in the wrong place. And there was a question last night on Question Time, you know, and this gentleman was saying, you know, well, why are we dilly-dallying around about sanctions? Why aren't we going, you know, why are we kind of standing and watching from the sidelines and waiting to see, you know, why isn't Boris stepping forward? So I guess what was mentioned in the Daily Mail. And it was very interesting to see sort of like the audience's take on how it was going to impact them personally, as well as just wanting to stop this tragedy happening. So there's so many emotions flying around, and it still also feels a little bit Hollywood in a way, which is scary, because I guess it was inevitable we get to this point. If you keep putting so many dramatizations on the TV, it all becomes a little bit odd and surreal in some ways. But yes, it still feels very surreal to me this morning. Very surreal. I think
the other picture, well, we've got the lady on the front, is this picture from the front page of the Telegraph, which is very striking, which is of a wounded soldier. And really, this is what we're not seeing at the moment. We're not seeing the body bags. We're not seeing the burnt bodies. We're not seeing the actual destruction that is taking place. You know, soldiers being killed as we're talking now. And I think it's only when those pictures are zoomed in. I would like to say, by the way, we talked about journalism, and you talked about your number of pages. There are these fantastic journalists there on the front line. You know, these guys in Sky News and the BBC and everybody there from all around the world, these journalists trying to report the truth. I was watching the reporter from Russia, and she was really slamming Putin, you know, really going for calling him a despot and everything else. And I thought that was a really brave thing to do. She's in a studio in Moscow, or, you know, these people, they make people disappear. You know, these are very powerful people. And I think the world order has completely shifted on its axis. And I hate to say it, everyone's got to wake up to it. They've got to wake up to it, and we've got to respond to it. The thing about Russia, it's a nuclear power. We cannot go into Ukraine with soldiers. You could start a whole nuclear war. Who thought he was going to do it? Anyway, sorry, let's go over to you, Ian. Thanks ever so much. Sorry, I went on my...
I was like, no.
Ian, let's go over to the other side. You wear lots and lots of different hats. You were at the Parliament the other day, weren't you?
Yeah, House of Lords on Tuesday evening, where they hosted a reception for Western Gateway and the fusion bid for the prototype power plant that we're making for Albury and Berkeley. And people in Gloucestershire will remember the huge heritage of nuclear, you know, back in the 60s. And we're one of 5 bids now, Mark, out of 15, stood in the race with the government decision by the end of the year. The problem we have and the challenge we have is a thing called levelling up. And what we've got Idea in Scotland, we've got a site in Cumberland, we've got a site in Nottingham, and then a site at Goole. Now, I know from my reporting days for the Daily Mail in Yorkshire, Goole is about the last place in the world to be set. It's sort of on the way to Hull, but I would say that that's an area that is prime for levelling up. What we have here, though, is huge expertise in high temperature scientists from EDF, here around the corner from where I live in Barnwood. And we've got, you know, the resource of the 7, which is just absolutely massive. The potential here is for something like 30,000 jobs after this thing is built. This is a prototype. You may have seen the great TV a couple of weeks ago. It was actually the day before the Atomic Energy came here to talk to us. We gave them a presentation. And you may remember that flash of a couple of seconds. And this is, fusion is the power of the sun. It's safe, green, and potentially this is a huge benefit to all of us. So we're trying very hard on this. All the councillors are involved, all our MPs. I'm working on it with some colleagues from Business West. So we're having a go there. And then the Western Gateway have got their first conference, Powering a Greener and Fairer Future. That's in Newport in Wales on March 8th. So lots of things happening in that area.
Okay, thanks ever so much for giving us an update on that, Ian. Absolutely brilliant. It's really, really exciting. Okay, let's go over to you, Viv. Viv, what's happening in your world? Obviously, wearing your musical hat. You're not far from my office on Barbican Road.
I'm certainly not very far. And just on the, going back to the fusion thing, physics is an amazing thing. And the fusion thing doesn't leave that legacy of a lot of, you know, sort of nuclear fallout, you know, that we've had with Berkeley. No. So that is the way forward. And I sincerely hope your efforts work, Ian. Sincerely wish you well with that.
So going on to the music side of things, sorry, Viv, because I know the time goes very quickly.
Sorry, yes, sir. Yeah.
You're trying to raise some money, aren't you, to buy the building?
Yes. Okay, we're in a perfect storm of things being difficult, and true to form, Gloucestershire Academy of Music, which I've been involved with for 40 odd years, because I was there at the very beginning helping set up music for under 5s when my children were tiny. It has evolved into this amazing art centre in the centre of Gloucester City at at Barbican House, which overlooks the docks. It's next to the prison. And what we're doing is we're aiming to buy the building to ensure that we can secure our future. We also house, under our tenancy from the City Council, the Flowers Band. We've got African drumming, we've got Indian performing arts, we've got Jackie Shaw Thomas mid-80s ballet still going on there, amazingly. And we've got a host of workshops with the Gamlan involving schools. We do dementia links with school children and care homes. So we do an awful lot of community-based work that involves music and the arts. We took over the building in 2014, renting it from the City Council, who've been incredibly kind to us. They've been very generous. We have a peppercorn rent, and we took over the building, refurbished the whole thing as far as we could afford to. I spent a summer cleaning out probation office loos. It was an old probation offices, and getting the sharp boxes, the needle boxes out of the interview rooms. And we turned it into a lovely, lovely space with each interview room a teaching room. The main hall we've refloored, that was the sort of open plan office. So that's now our sort of main hall area. And we've been working in there now, say, developing this community art centre in the heart of Gloucester, right next to Blackfriars, which I'll mention later on with the Midas element. So we're in a very good location there. We can't necessarily stay there forever, unfortunately, because at the end of this year, our lease runs out with the peppercorn rent. Now, what's going to happen is that the City Council will be reviewing what they do, and if they charged us an economic rent, we would be out of pocket and gone within a couple of years. An economic.
How much money do you need to raise, Viv? What's the actual?
You need to raise. yes, we need to raise £500,000. That's the sort of max that we want. We're looking at the building itself will cost between £350,000 and £380,000 at the moment. That's our current valuations, both by us and the City Council. We've got half the money for that already, so we're sort of on our way. We've got a number of trusts helping us, including CHK, the Architectural Heritage Fund, the Radcliffe Trust, Garfield Weston, a number of sort of big trusts, but we're looking to actually sort of raise the money so we can buy it and some, i.e. make sure it works for us. So it's a hugely important time. It's our 40th anniversary. We started life in the Forest of Dean in someone's kitchen, the founder's kitchen, Caroline Lumsden. It's grown and grown since then. We have 2,000 students coming through our doors every year, as well as these other activities going on. And we feel that for the city, we offer something rather special. If it was sold, if we had to move out and the City Council decided, right, we're going to sort of turn it into something else, they would probably turn it into residential, and because it has a little car park currently with Midas's site hut in it, I might add. So if that happened, you'd have more and more residential in that area. The city and country developers at the prison are planning masses of residential, as well as obviously UOG with their student flats behind us at Blackfriars. So it's a residential area and we offer something a little bit different. So we're very, very much hoping that we achieve our goal, buy it, then maintain it as a special arts centre.
Okay, well, that was a very long pitch, Viv.
Sorry.
Poor Lindsey and Viv. And well, you've got like 30 seconds left now.
Well, I'm going to surprise you, Mark, and put my other hat on, because the bit you didn't mention was I'm governor of the chair of the governors at Gloucestershire College. So I'm going to plug Gloucestershire College. Ian has mentioned levelling up, and I think education is the way to level up. And I think when I got involved with the college a few years ago, I just realised actually how much pockets of poverty and there is in Gloucestershire, and actually further south from here as well, southwest. So I think the Western Gate was amazing, but the college is a huge success story. I think it's a bit of a hidden gem in the county, to be honest. We're doing record apprenticeship numbers across all kinds of sectors. We've got the cyber HQ on the Cheltenham campus, which is just incredible. It's a huge amount of positivity around that from local businesses. So there's some real success stories, and I think good luck to Ian with bringing the nuclear thing on board. The one that's slightly tricky, I think, with the levelling up, right? It's hard to argue against levelling up, right? So if we don't win it and it goes to Yorkshire, you can hardly say that's a bad thing ultimately. But hey, it'd be fantastic to have it back in Gloucestershire, right? So good luck with that, Ian.
Okay,
and Will, just to mention, FE colleges have always struggled for money. We had a story the other day which I thought was absolutely appalling about this craziness of increasing debt to young people, paying back until their age about 60 from university. That is madness. Absolutely. I'm a vice president of Gloucestershire College, and as Mark knows, my big battle in life here, a lot of it has been about apprenticeships and young people. And we've got to get away from the idea that if you don't go to university, you're a failure.
I think the government is starting to recognise, aren't they, at last, saying actually, no, we don't need to send everybody to university, and how fantastic apprenticeships are. And the college is a great place to deliver that stuff. No. Thank you, Ian.
No, thanks ever so much for that, Will. I'm going to go over to you now, Lindsey. Lindsey, obviously you wear all these different hats as well. The Cleeve Hill Hotel and obviously the turf side of things. Amazing job you did during the lockdown with turf, by the way. How's it all going now?
Well, really, really well. I think well, the hotel, I mean, the hotel is just going from strength to strength. Business is as strong as it has ever been, if not stronger, to be perfectly honest, sitting at this point in the year, looking ahead at the forecast. And we're echoing it around hospitality, throughout turf. And I think it's tantamount to actually just coming together and helping each other and being there for each other and bouncing ideas off of each other and really creating that community, which wasn't there before. Yeah, I mean, there are obviously hardships, and don't get me wrong, we are moaning about a number of things. But I think the thing is that we stood up and we did something, and we stepped forward and we said, actually, do you know what, can we come to the table? And I think because we've done that, and because of the interactions with Visit Cheltenham and the council and the Chamber of Commerce and all those different bodies within town, we're now actually there as sort of someone to be consulted, as well as actually being something to look up, you know, when you want to go out for dinner. So I think we've got the best of both worlds at the moment, and long may it continue. You know, we've got a great social scene between us, and being there to support each other. I think especially, you know, when things,
I think when rings were really tough and it was during that lockdown, you and I talked quite a lot. I think you just did an amazing job, by the way. Absolutely amazing. How many members of Turf are there now?
We're just coming shy of 50.
Wow. Okay. Absolutely brilliant. And then and the Chamber of Commerce. What, you've got a new hat there as well?
Well, the wonderful Claire Fairs was like, could you possibly come and help? So yeah, it's incredibly exciting though, because we're rejigging the chamber, we're revitalizing it, we've got a load of new things going on, and we're really trying to fill the gap of being that association that's just there to glue all the businesses together. You know, we want to be there. It's a family of businesses, and we want to create that atmosphere, not only at events, but through what we do through the website, and, you know, any sort of campaigning we need to do. But yeah, it's very exciting times. So there's loads. I've got my little events hat on now. So yes, so I'm creating lots of wonderful things for the year ahead. So so keep watching the website, and keep an eye on what's going on with the chamber events.
Well, we'll be working with you guys very, very closely on that here at Punchline as well. Okay, well, we've got to wrap the show up. We're kind of well over time already, but let's quickly go over the stories that caught our eye this week in Punchline, if that's okay. I'll start with you, Ian. What's the number one story for you, please?
Well, the story I was interested in, Will mentioned it a bit earlier, was St James's Place, 1.5 billion. This is an amazing company based in Cirencester. Thank God they're still there and haven't moved down to London or somewhere else. Huge employer, but they are dealing with, unlike the people on this call, high growth people. Now, that means you have a lot of money, but these are people investing Gloucestershire and the world. This is a very major company. I think it's good to see that that they're doing well.
I would imagine Will deals with people of high growth all the time, don't you, Will?
Yeah,
I'm
indeed,
talking about
Mark.
us
Yes.
individually.
So, Will, I would say to you, Will,
Like the people on this call, Mark.
Will, what was the story that caught your eye in this week's Punch, please, mate?
Well, actually, you know, Punchline, right? Every week you can pick up stories about more investment in Gloucestershire. So I just picked up about the Gloucester food dock, because I think, again, that's a fantastic investment. That's going to help link the docks to the city centre again. And it's just, you know, I could sit here and name 20 off the top of my head without even thinking about it, where in Cheltenham, Gloucester, Stroud, the canal, all sorts of things, where there's investment is pouring into the county, which is just amazing to see. It's fantastic. And it's been going on for years, and hopefully it will continue for a few more.
And it's funny, isn't it? Because every single day we seem to be doing a kind of investment story and a good news story like that.
Yeah,
totally agree, mate. Okay, Viv, what's caught your eye in this week's Punchline, please?
Well, the good thing about the food dock is it's just opposite the Gloucestershire Academy of Music. But what I'm going to look at very briefly, unfortunately, is not quite such a good story. It's the Midas collapse, leaving thousands of people out of pocket. And it's also they've left their site hut in the car park of Gloucestershire Academy of Music. So you've got their site hut, not quite knowing what's going to happen. City Heart, who are the developers, and Mark McNamee, who's the MD there, is saying they're working feverishly to find another contractor to finish that student apartment project. And it needs to be finished by September. So they're really under the cosh. So it'd be very interesting to see who comes in. And as I said, I really hope it resolves itself and that we can park our cars in future in our own car park.
That story there, we have tried to contact them three or four times, and no one will give us a statement on that particular thing. Really? Okay, Lindsay, thank you for that. Viv, Lindsay, what story caught your eye in this week's Punchline, please?
I love the cycle trail, the article about the proposed cycle trail. Thanks, Will. And the idea of getting from Stroud all the way up to Cleeve. I mean, I bank on to the Cleeve Common, and we've got the Cotswold Way, and the just sheer joy that everybody gets from this. I think to be able to then connect up the cycle pathways as well, whether it's for practical business or for just leisure. I mean, what more could you want? It's just going to be a fantastic sort of way of connecting the county further. I think it's so exciting.
I need to correct you on one thing, Lindsay. I think you'll find it'll be people coming from Bishop's Cleeve to Stroud, not the other way around.
Yes, downhill.
I tell you what, I go on about. I love that. I also love the canal corridor. What they're doing there is absolutely amazing. I keep going on about it. I'll be able to walk from Gloucester all the way to Stroud. Can't see it with your background, Will. It's like the Invisible Man.
It's a picture of the new railway bridge that I spent Christmas watching them put in at midnight.
Yes, yeah.
I went down there for that as well, but sad. Anyway, the top stories I had was I totally agree with you in St James's Place. I had the International Centre for Birds of Prey to close. That was very sad. Been there lots and lots of time. 5 acres. I went to visit the 5 acres site in the Forest of Dean, the regeneration. If you haven't seen that video, that's on this week's Commercial Property Forum, sponsored by Evans Jones. And what was the other one? Oh yes, the second-hand car market. The fact that the cost of a second-hand car is now costing more than a new car, and prices have jumped nearly 45%. Absolutely amazing. Anyway, if you like the show, please like, share, and subscribe. I'd like to thank my fantastic panel of guests today. Thanks also very much for joining us on what is a tremendously sad news day, actually, for the world. Thank you very much for joining Punchline Talks. See you soon. Bye.
Bye.